Okay, this next situation is kind of interesting. Billy was found incapacitated in his apartment. Billy was a Vietnam veteran. Some kids broke in, beat him up, and left him for dead in his apartment, literally. And they didn't find him there for like 2 weeks. When the landlord finally called him, they took him to the hospital, they notified Adult Protective Services, and he had lost the ability to function on his own. So Adult Protective Services called me up, because I was the military liaison for the state, and said, will you agree to serve as his guardian, because we can't find any other family members. And we said, yes, we'll do that. So what now?
Well, in this case, we filed for guardianship. We were continuing to attempt to look for relatives. We hired a locator service that's their job, is to go out and look for relatives. Nobody came forward, nothing was turned up. So we stepped into the role as guardian and had to start paying his bills, doing everything that a family member would do, meeting with the assisted living facility on a quarterly basis, buying his groceries, going to visit him, shopping, exactly, just pretty much everything. Kathy did a lot of it.
Well, during the course of all this, I was amazed at the number of people that it took to take care of one person who couldn't take care of themselves anymore and had no planning or documents in place. So, and again, it was like, it took immediate precedence because this gentleman needed care. We had to find a place for him to live that he would have good care in. And there was just so many things we had to do for him. We had to go through a safety deposit box and find any kind of records, any kind of banking records, so we could do all that because we had things we had to get done for him. And then the gentleman unfortunately died. And again, you can't just say, well, now what do I do? So as his legal guardians, I had him transferred out to a funeral home in Yukon that I deal with. And I think during one of Jerry's conversations with the gentleman, he indicated he wanted to be cremated. So Jerry had to write the obituary with all the military honors. I didn't know how to do that. The gentleman was cremated. They had to get the authority there, and then the funeral home calls me back and says, come get him. So I went and got him. He was in an urn in a box, and I put him in the front seat of my car and put the seatbelt on. And I took him back to the assisted living center, and I think again, we still couldn't find any heirs. So they spread his ashes and planted a tree out in one of their gardens or something. That was the only thing that we knew to do at the time to make sure he was properly cared for.
Now, it's interesting that none of the relatives showed up when we were taking care of all of his needs as a guardian. Nobody showed up while we were filing the probate and taking care of his remains and doing all of that. They only showed up when the money hit the line.
And I have one more thing I was just going to say. This probate took, from start to finish, it just closed this summer. So it took over 2 years to close this probate. There were no assets other than a bank account. So it was purely liquid. There was a total of $168,000 in that bank account that was to be split between 39 heirs who had come forward. And by law, you still have to put aside money for the other heirs that are entitled to it, and then all of the attorney's fees that were involved in this case. So you can imagine the length of time and then the amount of money that those people received when it was all over and done with.
Yeah, if you get in a situation like this, don't try to negotiate it on your own. Get with an attorney, and if you can get out of it like we did, get out of it as quick as you can, because you don't want to be stuck trying to make decisions on who those heirs are. Which points out one of the issues, and I want to sidestep here just a minute. Many of you in your trusts, you say to my children, and if my children don't survive, to their children and grandchildren. But then you have what we call the Titanic clause, where if all of my family's gone, my children, my grandchildren, and so forth are gone, you leave it to my heirs at law. And if you say my heirs at law, this is the type of situation you're putting your family into. So it's always far better to say to a church, to a charity, to a specific set of relatives, but that heirs at law can create a real problem for the family down the road. Okay, next question. The entire, and it ties right into this, the entire Smith family dies in an automobile accident, and the family trust is now payable to heirs at law. How do you know who these are?
Okay, well, I'll answer this. In your estate planning portfolio that we prepared for you, for those of you that are clients, there is a tab called Location List. And during your final signing, we suggest to you all to fill it out. And part of that is who to notify when something happens to you, family, friends, advisors. And so the first place that people would look, or that we would tell your family to look, would be to look in that location list. So hopefully those of you that are clients have filled that out, and if you haven't, this is a good spur hopefully to get you to do so. If you're not our client and you don't have a location list, then probably you'll have to go with a locator service like we were talking about in this last scenario where we didn't have any luck with the locator service for the guardianship proceeding. But usually in a probate, they're more likely to come forward thinking that something might be gained for them out of it. So, and finally, I guess you could just file an action with the court if that still turns up no relatives. If you've tried publishing, you've tried a locator service, then file an action with the court asking the court for direction just to make sure that you are doing all that a court would think you're required to do and protecting yourself from any type of claims further down the road for mismanagement or failure to do something.